Nobody inside the arena expected the Fever's matchup with the Las Vegas Aces to ignite one of the most explosive debates of the WNBA season. But by the final buzzer, fans weren't just talking about the scoreboard. They were talking about a fierce sequence that had social media exploding with claims that Caitlin Clark's enforcer had finally sent a message to one of her biggest on-court rivals, Chennedy. Within minutes, highlight clips spread everywhere, emotions ran high, and thousands of fans began arguing over whether this was justice, revenge, or simply hard basketball. Nothing about the reaction felt ordinary. As the clips continued circulating online, sports commentators, former players, and fans rushed to share their opinions. Some believed the Fever had intentionally responded to weeks of physical play against Clark. Others insisted people were exaggerating normal basketball contact into a much bigger controversy. No official statements confirmed many of the dramatic claims spreading online, but that didn't stop hashtags from trending or heated debates from taking over every major sports platform. Suddenly, one game had become the center of a league-wide conversation about toughness, retaliation, and respect. But what really happened during that emotional night? Was this simply another intense WNBA battle, or had months of frustration finally reached a breaking point? As more angles, reactions, and behind-the-scenes comments began surfacing, fans started connecting dots that few had noticed before. And if those growing theories are even partially true, this story is far bigger than a single game. And the biggest twist is only just beginning. From the opening possession, the intensity inside the arena felt completely different from an ordinary regular season game. Every loose ball was contested, every screen was delivered with force, and every defensive stop drew an emotional response from both benches. Fans immediately noticed how much physical pressure Caitlin Clark faced whenever she touched the basketball. Some believed the Aces were simply executing an aggressive defensive game plan. Others argued the contact reflected the growing frustration that often follows the league's most heavily covered superstar. Clark never appeared interested in backing down. Instead of avoiding pressure, she continued attacking, moving without the basketball, and forcing defenders to work on every possession. Each successful play from Indiana increased the crowd's energy, while every hard defensive sequence from Las Vegas fueled another wave of reactions online. Within minutes, clips from the first quarter were already circulating across social media, with fans debating whether officials were allowing too much contact or simply letting both teams compete physically. The emotional temperature continued rising as the game progressed. Players exchanged determined looks after difficult possessions, teammates rushed to help one another off the floor after heavy contact, and both coaching staffs spent long stretches communicating with officials. Television cameras repeatedly captured emotional reactions from the benches, encouraging fans to analyze every facial expression and every conversation. Nothing dramatic had officially happened yet, but many viewers believed the game was steadily moving toward a defining moment that could change its entire direction. Then came the sequence that instantly changed the conversation. During one highly competitive possession, a physical confrontation between players quickly became the focus of every camera inside the arena. The play itself unfolded in seconds, but the reaction lasted much longer. Supporters immediately flooded social media with competing interpretations. Some believed Indiana had finally answered months of aggressive treatment directed toward Clark. Others insisted the play represented nothing more than two teams battling with playoff-level intensity. No consensus emerged, only louder arguments. Within minutes, the player many Fever fans had nicknamed Caitlin Clark's enforcer became the center of attention. Online supporters praised her willingness to match physical basketball with physical basketball, arguing every successful team needs teammates who refuse to let opponents dictate the emotional tone of a game. Critics strongly disagreed, saying fans were unfairly celebrating unnecessary confrontation. Neither perspective was officially validated, but the debate spread so quickly that the incident overshadowed almost every other highlight from the contest. Attention soon shifted toward Chennedy, whose name immediately began trending alongside Clark's. Although the two players were not directly involved in every sequence fueling discussion, many fans connected previous headlines to the emotions surrounding the current game. Social media users created comparison videos, revisited earlier incidents, and argued that lingering tensions from past matchups had influenced how viewers interpreted everything unfolding on the court. Others reminded audiences that drawing sweeping conclusions from isolated moments could be misleading because competitive basketball often produces emotional reactions. Commentators quickly found themselves divided as well. Some praised the Fever's resilience, saying the roster appeared more united and confident than at any previous point in the season. Others cautioned against turning routine physical basketball into dramatic personal rivalries. Analysts repeatedly emphasized that no official evidence supported many of the theories circulating online. Still, the combination of Clark's popularity, Carter's history of controversial headlines, and Indiana's emotional performance created the perfect conditions for another viral sports debate. Meanwhile, Clark remained focused on the game itself. Rather than publicly reacting to the growing controversy, she continued directing the offense and celebrating key plays with teammates. Many supporters viewed that composure as evidence of growing maturity under constant pressure. Critics argued every star receives physical defensive attention eventually. Regardless of perspective, nearly everyone agreed that Clark's presence had transformed ordinary regular season contests into nationally discussed events where even small incidents could dominate sports media for days. As Indiana continued building momentum, another unexpected narrative began taking shape. Fans noticed teammates repeatedly celebrating hustle plays, defensive stops, and emotional moments together with unusual enthusiasm. Some believed the Fever had developed a stronger internal chemistry after enduring months of public scrutiny. Others suggested the shared criticism surrounding Clark had actually strengthened the team's collective identity. Nothing officially confirmed those interpretations, but supporters increasingly described Indiana as a roster beginning to embrace its own competitive personality. By the time the final minutes approached, the basketball itself almost seemed secondary to the story unfolding around it. Every possession carried emotional significance because viewers believed they were witnessing more than a simple regular season matchup. Online discussions exploded with claims that the Fever had finally established a tougher identity capable of standing up to any opponent. Others dismissed those ideas as emotional overreactions driven by viral highlight clips rather than objective analysis. The disagreement only intensified engagement across every platform. Then another unexpected development quietly emerged after the game. Fans noticed subtle post-game interactions, carefully chosen interview answers, and social media activity that immediately sparked fresh speculation. None of those moments confirmed any hidden conflict, yet thousands of viewers began piecing together elaborate theories about what had happened behind closed doors after the final buzzer. As those rumors spread, the story shifted from one emotional game to a much larger conversation about locker room confidence, league rivalries, and the Fever's changing identity. Just when it seemed the biggest controversy had already happened on the court, the post-game reaction threatened to eclipse everything fans had witnessed during the game itself. And according to growing online speculation, the next twist wouldn't involve a hard foul or controversial whistle. It would involve the emotional fallout spreading across the league, where players, analysts, and fans would soon find themselves taking sides in one of the season's most heated debates. The final buzzer ended the game, but it did nothing to quiet the controversy. If anything, the emotional intensity only grew stronger once the players left the court. Clips from the game's most physical moments flooded social media within minutes, collecting millions of views as fans replayed every angle. Basketball forums, sports shows, and podcasts immediately shifted their attention toward Indiana's emotional performance. Some fans celebrated the Fever's toughness, while others questioned whether the conversation had become far more dramatic than the actual events justified. Hashtags connected to Caitlin Clark, Chennedy Carter, and the Fever quickly climbed the trending lists. Every slow-motion replay seemed to generate a completely different interpretation. Some viewers believed Indiana had finally proven it would no longer allow Clark to face constant physical pressure without teammates responding. Others argued that basketball has always been an emotional, physical sport and that fans were turning routine competition into a personal rivalry. The disagreement fueled non-stop engagement, making the story impossible to ignore across the sports world. Television analysts soon joined the debate with sharply different opinions. Several praised the Fever's visible chemistry, suggesting the roster had grown more confident under pressure. Others warned that emotional narratives can sometimes overshadow the basketball itself. While no official evidence supported many of the viral claims circulating online, commentators acknowledged that public perception often shapes headlines just as much as confirmed facts. That reality only intensified interest in every interview, press conference, and post-game reaction that followed. Attention then shifted toward Indiana's locker room. Reporters asked players about the team's physical mindset and whether recent criticism had strengthened their unity. Predictably, responses focused on teamwork, preparation, and playing hard every night. Still, many fans believed subtle comments hinted at a deeper sense of togetherness. Some interpreted ordinary post-game remarks as evidence that the Fever had consciously adopted a more aggressive identity. Nothing officially confirmed those theories, but speculation continued growing with every passing hour. Meanwhile, Chennedy Carter's name continued appearing alongside countless reaction videos and opinion pieces. Many social media users revisited previous headlines involving Carter, comparing them with the emotions surrounding the Fever matchup. Others argued those comparisons were unfair because every game presents different circumstances. The discussion became less about one specific play and more about broader questions involving reputation, competitiveness, and how quickly public narratives can evolve in the age of viral sports content. Then another unexpected storyline emerged. Fans began pointing out how much the Fever bench celebrated defensive stops, hustle plays, and emotional moments throughout the contest. Some believe those reactions reflected a team that had finally discovered its collective confidence after weeks of scrutiny. Others viewed the celebrations as perfectly normal for a young roster-building chemistry. Regardless of interpretation, those clips spread rapidly, reinforcing the idea that Indiana's identity might be changing before everyone's eyes. As online discussions intensified, former players offered more measured perspectives. Many reminded audiences that physical basketball has always existed at the professional level and warned against drawing sweeping conclusions from isolated incidents. At the same time, several acknowledged that the Fever appeared mentally tougher than earlier in the season. They credited improved chemistry, increased experience, and growing trust among teammates rather than any single confrontation. Those balanced opinions helped calm some debates, but did little to slow the viral momentum. Another twist developed when fans began speculating about how future opponents might approach games against Indiana. Some believed teams would now expect a more physical response whenever Clark faced heavy defensive pressure. Others dismissed that idea entirely, arguing coaches based strategies on matchups rather than online narratives. No evidence suggested league-wide tactical changes were occurring, but the possibility itself became another popular discussion point that fueled endless predictions before upcoming games. The league also found itself under renewed public attention. Questions about officiating standards, player safety, and maintaining competitive balance resurfaced across sports media. While league officials continued emphasizing fair competition and consistent enforcement of rules, fans remained divided over whether physical play was being handled appropriately. Some believed tougher officiating would reduce controversy, while others argued the league should allow competitive intensity to remain part of its identity. The debate reflected broader conversations about the WNBA's rapid growth. By the end of the week, one thing had become undeniable. The Fever's victory was no longer remembered simply for the final score. Instead, it had evolved into one of the season's biggest talking points, driven by emotional reactions, viral clips, and nonstop speculation. Yet as the attention reached its highest point, fans started noticing new developments that hinted the biggest surprise still hadn't arrived. And if those growing theories proved even partially accurate, the next chapter could completely reshape the narrative once again. The emotional fallout reached another level the morning after the game. Sports television opened with discussions about Indiana instead of championship contenders, while basketball podcasts devoted entire episodes to the Fever's growing confidence. Across social media, fans continued replaying every physical possession, arguing over whether the team had finally established an identity built on resilience and unity. Some believed the victory marked a turning point for Indiana's season, while others insisted emotions surrounding Caitlin Clark had once again magnified an otherwise ordinary regular season contest. The fan base quickly divided into passionate camps. One side argued the Fever had finally shown they would not allow Clark to carry the burden of physical play alone. The other side warned that celebrating confrontation risked overshadowing the team's actual basketball progress. Comment sections filled with thousands of opposing opinions, each claiming to have discovered the real story. Yet despite the confidence shown by many online voices, much of the discussion remained based on interpretation rather than confirmed facts, making the debate even more intense. Clark herself became the center of another media storm despite avoiding inflammatory comments. Reporters repeatedly asked whether she felt protected by her teammates and whether the physical nature of recent games had changed her approach. She largely kept the focus on basketball, emphasizing teamwork and preparation instead of fueling controversy. That measured response earned praise from many observers, while others continued searching for hidden meaning in every carefully chosen sentence. Her restraint, ironically, kept the speculation alive. Attention also remained fixed on the teammate many fans had labeled Clark's enforcer. Videos highlighting her hustle, defensive intensity, and emotional celebrations spread rapidly across social media. Supporters described her as the embodiment of loyalty and competitive spirit. Critics argued that fan-created narratives were assigning roles that players themselves had never publicly embraced. Regardless of those differing views, her popularity surged as basketball audiences increasingly associated her with the Fever's tougher image and growing confidence. Meanwhile, Chennedy remained part of the wider conversation, even without making dramatic public statements. Fans continued revisiting previous incidents and comparing them with the latest controversy, attempting to connect separate events into one ongoing storyline. Others cautioned against drawing conclusions from selective clips, reminding audiences that basketball careers should not be defined by isolated viral moments. Those reminders did little to slow the debate, which had expanded far beyond the original game itself. Former players also weighed in, offering perspectives shaped by years of professional experience. Many acknowledged that physical basketball has always been part of the sport and emphasized that emotional games should not automatically be viewed as personal feuds. Several praised Indiana's composure under pressure while encouraging fans to appreciate the quality of competition rather than focusing exclusively on conflict. Their comments brought needed balance to the discussion, although the louder social media narratives continued dominating headlines. League-wide, the incident reignited conversations about officiating consistency and player safety. Fans questioned whether referees were allowing too much contact in games involving the league's biggest stars, while others argued that increased physicality reflected the natural intensity of elite competition. The WNBA itself did not validate many of the online claims, but the debate highlighted how every controversial moment now receives unprecedented attention because of the league's rapidly expanding audience and growing national profile. Media outlets soon noticed another important development. The Fever were no longer being discussed only as a rebuilding team centered around Caitlin Clark. Increasingly, analysts described them as a roster developing chemistry, confidence, and a willingness to compete together through adversity. Whether that perception accurately reflected reality remained open to debate, but it represented a significant shift in how many fans viewed Indiana's future. The narrative surrounding the franchise had clearly begun evolving. Just when many believed the emotional fallout had finally reached its peak, a fresh wave of speculation quietly emerged. Fans started analyzing upcoming matchups, wondering how future opponents would respond to Indiana's new reputation. Would teams become even more physical, or would they approach Clark and the Fever differently after this nationally discussed game? Nothing was certain, but one thing became obvious. The story wasn't ending here. In fact, according to many fans, the biggest twist was still waiting just around the corner. Just when it seemed the debate had finally reached its limit, another unexpected twist sent fans back into detective mode. Instead of focusing on what had happened during the Fever's victory, attention shifted toward what might happen next. Upcoming matchups involving Indiana suddenly carried far more intrigue than they had only a week earlier. Supporters wondered whether opposing teams would challenge the Fever's new physical identity, while others believed the recent controversy had simply created another exaggerated social media narrative with little long-term impact. Every new practice clip, media availability, and player interview immediately became headline material. Fans carefully analyzed body language, smiles, brief conversations, and even routine warm-up footage, searching for clues that supported their favorite theories. Some believed the Fever looked more united than ever, while others argued viewers were projecting drama onto ordinary team interactions. Nothing officially confirmed any major behind-the-scenes changes, but the constant speculation transformed even the smallest moments into viral talking points across basketball communities. Meanwhile, basketball analysts began asking a different question altogether. Had the Fever quietly become one of the league's toughest teams mentally? Rather than discussing only Clark's scoring or playmaking, commentators started highlighting Indiana's improved chemistry, resilience, and confidence during pressure-filled situations. Some believed repeated adversity had forced the roster to mature more quickly than expected. Others cautioned that true contenders prove themselves consistently over an entire season rather than through one emotionally charged victory. The conversation surrounding Chennedy also continued evolving. While many fans connected her name to previous headlines involving Clark, others urged audiences to separate past controversies from current events. Analysts repeatedly reminded viewers that rivalries naturally grow when elite competitors face one another under intense public scrutiny. Even so, social media users continued linking separate moments together, creating dramatic storylines that extended far beyond anything officially confirmed by players or the league. Another surprising development emerged when former coaches discussed how increased national attention changes everything inside professional sports. They explained that once a league attracts larger audiences, every controversial possession, emotional reaction, and post-game interview receives far greater analysis than in previous years. According to those observers, the Fever were now experiencing exactly what happens when a young team becomes one of the sport's biggest attractions. Success, pressure, criticism, and attention all arrive together. Supporters of Caitlin Clark argued that the recent game demonstrated an important shift in team culture. They believed Indiana had developed greater trust, with teammates visibly supporting one another during difficult stretches. Critics countered that fans were creating emotional narratives unsupported by concrete evidence. Regardless of which interpretation proved more accurate, one reality remained undeniable. Public perception of the Fever had changed dramatically. They were no longer viewed simply as a rebuilding roster, but as a team capable of generating national headlines every week. As anticipation built for the next stretch of games, social media creators produced endless predictions about future confrontations involving Clark and the Fever. Some forecast even more physical battles, while others expected officials to call games differently because of recent public attention. Those predictions remained speculative, but they reflected the growing belief that every Indiana matchup now carried additional emotional weight. Fans were no longer watching solely for the basketball. They were watching for the next chapter in an unfolding league-wide storyline. By the end of the week, one conclusion stood above everything else. Whether the online theories ultimately proved accurate or not, the Fever had become one of the WNBA's biggest talking points. Caitlin Clark's star power, her teammates' growing confidence, and the endless debates surrounding physical play had transformed ordinary regular season games into must-watch events. And with the season still unfolding, many fans believe the most dramatic moment of this entire story may still be waiting just ahead. If there's one thing this entire story has proven, it's that the WNBA has entered a completely different era. Every hard foul, every emotional reaction, every post-game interview, and every viral clip now sparks nationwide debate within minutes. The Fever's victory didn't just add another win to the standings. It fueled conversations about team chemistry, physical play, player protection, and how quickly narratives can spread online. Some fans believe Indiana has finally developed the toughness needed to compete with the league's best, while others argue that social media often amplifies routine basketball moments into much bigger stories. As always, many of the most dramatic claims circulating online remain unconfirmed and should be treated as speculation rather than established fact. What isn't speculation is the level of attention surrounding Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. Every game now feels like a major event, with millions of fans dissecting every possession, every quote, and every interaction. Whether people support Clark, criticize her, or simply enjoy the competition, it's clear that interest in these matchups continues to grow. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think the Fever have officially become one of the toughest teams in the WNBA? Did this game change the way opponents will approach Indiana going forward? And how much of the online controversy reflects what actually happened on the court versus the narratives that fans build afterward? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Respectful debate is always welcome, and we'd love to know which side of the conversation you're on. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more WNBA news, analysis, and the biggest stories surrounding Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Buchers, Sophie Cunningham, and the rest of the league, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next upload. Because if the reactions to this game are any indication, the biggest headlines of the season may still be ahead, and we'll be here to break down every twist as it unfolds.